Hagmann and Hagmann report for today. It is Tuesday, December 23rd, Christmas Eve, 2014. I'm Doug Hagmann in studio, co-host along with my son, Joe Hagmann. Together we are the Hagmann and Hagmann report. Folks, you're about to hear an incredible 3-hour program this evening. We look so forward to bringing you information that perhaps you have not heard on the definitely not within the mainstream media, and certainly maybe not thoroughly as well on the alternative media. You're listening to the only show where the news is presented to you in 3D. We look well beyond the headlines, the bylines, and fog of disinformation, misinformation, to bring you the news behind the news. I want to thank you for deliberately tuning in to our show. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. I want to thank the new listeners. It seems like every time we turn on our computers or go to our email, we have people checking in with us from different parts of the world, not just the country, but the world. And I want to thank everyone for doing so. We have truly the best audience in the world. Joe and I are going to be getting into that here in a little bit, because I think there are a couple of things that we need to tell you. I want to thank each and every one of you for joining us and your belief and your trust in us as we walk through this minefield of current events together. By the way, that little jingle at the beginning of the program, we'll play it again during the program. Thank you, Ken from Birmingham. Thank you, Ken from Birmingham. What a great job. God bless you, my friend. Well, with that, Joe, welcome to the studio. I should say that Stan's not going to be with us tonight. He's got family obligations, and that's just it. I mean, it was kind of he said, we were talking to him. I think, Joe, you had dialogue with him, and he was going to come on for part of the second hour, and then basically we said, well, you know what, he's got family from another country visiting, so let him enjoy his holiday, right?
Yeah, he's not going to be coming on tonight, as he does have out-of-town family there with him. And he said he's having a good time. I have to pull up the email to see if I think it's his granddaughters, he said, or his daughter was in town. But they also have children running around, and he said not only would he like to spend time with them, but the background noise might not be good for the radio also. So I hope Stan and Holly have fun. We wish them a Merry Christmas and enjoy the time with your family.
Absolutely. And folks, let me just say this. We do have the best audience in the world. Each and every one of you listening to this program tonight, thank you so much. And if you're listening to this on archive, thank you. I just want to say that one of you, well, actually two of you, made my wife cry today. I mean, real tears, real crying, and really couldn't talk. And this, I just want to give you a little bit of background. Got a package. Now, normally, my wife opens the packages that we do receive. We get a lot of packages for different reasons. Unless it's duct taped, the package is duct taped, and there's wires sticking out, or there's psychotic writing on it, she'll open the package. She brought it into the office and this morning and opened this package. And she opened it, and I looked at her. I didn't see what it was. There was a screen in the way, a computer screen in the way, and she started crying. I'm thinking, well, boy, what's going on? And I'm going to be putting this up I'm going to be putting a picture up on their website. I just didn't have time to do it before the program. It's thank you, Nancy and Courtney from Missouri. Nancy painted one of the most lifelike images of our studio dog King that you've ever seen. I mean, this is a masterpiece. And even when I looked at it, it just almost, wow. I mean, I almost couldn't talk. Well, I couldn't talk. And when Joe looked at it, Joe, I mean, it's amazing. in memorial of King, our dog. And King serves as an icon for this program, which is, I mean, that's why, I mean, obviously he was a part of our family, and he was part of our studio family, but wow. What did you think of that, Joe? I mean,
I thought it was a fantastic painting, and I mean, it's perfect. I mean, it looks exactly like he looked when he was alive, and the detail was fantastic. Great painting.
Yeah, I thought it was too. I couldn't. You know, one of my hobbies, and I do this. I do oil paint, and I do nature scenes, and I've been doing it for probably 15 years, and but I could never. I don't do still life images of people or animals or anything like that. It's all landscape and flowers. Yeah, that's right. But wow, this really took my breath away. And I know folks are thinking, well, oh boy, all the news to be talking about. But I've just got a very sincere thank you to Nancy and her daughter Courtney. Nancy, her name appears on the bottom left of the painting, and it just really stunned me. I'm still stunned thinking about this, and even looking at it. It'll have a special place in our office, and everyone will see it. And I just want to say thank you so very much. Both Joe and I want to say thank you so much. Well, we've got a lot of news to get into this evening. Just want to let everyone know, of course, our schedule this week, it's been updated. It's changed a little bit for the good. Tomorrow night, we're going to be dark. Tomorrow night, we're going to spend some time with our family. Really, there's only 2 days a year that we do this, and that's Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve. We will be live on Christmas Day night, and we'll be live on New Year's Day night. And we ask, bring us up to your table, or bring us to your party on Christmas. We're going to be on Alex Jones on InfoWars on Friday. It's going to be 1 o'clock Eastern. Everything's been pretty much settled. I'm 99% sure, 99.9% sure that's all settled. We'll be talking about a number of issues, headlines, and so that should be really great. And of course, we'll have a regular show Friday night, and then on Monday, Nathan Leal will be joining us Monday the 29th. So it's going to be a really very busy time, but very solemn time too. Just want to let you know about what's taking place. So if we sound a little bit reserved tonight, it's kind of a solemn time in a way. It's a joyous time, but a solemn time. And as I look about, and Joe, we were talking about this, and you're traveling about, you're seeing people just in a frenzy to get things done, get their presents purchased, Christmas. And I think a lot of times people lose sight of the real reason for this season, as they say, or they lose sight of what's going on around them. And it's almost as if a lot of people aren't really seeing or believing the news, or not getting the news. They're not awake. Or if they are awake, there's a level of detachment, and it's pretty sad. And I'm just. In fact, I had to stop. I had to run a few errands today. Business really not related to Christmas at all. It was just some business I had to take care of. One ended up in Terry's office, and another somewhere else. But it's just amazing to me to see the people out there that are that think everything is fine, and that we're the crazy ones. I'll just share this with you. Boy, my blood pressure went through the roof, I'm sure, earlier today. And I told Joe about this, and there was a kind of an emergency in my family. Someone out of state, as well as my sister-in-law, one of my sister-in-laws, she had some difficulty, and she was traveling, and for the holidays, left her ATM card and other cards at home, and broke down. We were trying to figure out how to best help her, in terms of getting her car fixed and everything. And so to make a long story short, the only thing I could think of, and the only thing we could come up with based on her location and the situation and what she needed was, she had the ATM card at her home, got the money essentially, and we sent I went to a place to send money, Western Union. Now this is something I don't normally do, and Joe, you said you don't normally do that either. You haven't done that in a year or two or whatever.
Been a while.
Yeah. So forgive me, folks, if you're used to this, and I'm just not, and I think this is just an incredible. It was just an incredible situation. So I walk into this drugstore that has, it's a chain drugstore that has one of these Western Union offices. And what I had to do was I had to pick up the phone and talk with someone on the other end, give them information, and then, of course, take that information to the cash register. Ladies and gentlemen, I could not find. I went through the whole process a total of 3 times, and the reason being, not completing the transaction, but talking with the other person on the other end of the phone, giving them the information, and the information being typed out wrong, incorrectly. And I'll tell you the reason why. The reason why was no one could speak English. The first time it was a woman, and of course they record or they repeat the information back to you. And I told her, I said, look, I don't understand what you're saying. Can you put someone? Is there anyone there that speaks better English? I'm sorry. I was very nice. No, obviously she got it wrong. And the way I heard it was impossible for me to tell. So I had to go back, and I had to do it again. This time a guy answers the phone. Many, many times worse than the woman. And I said, look, I need to talk to somebody that speaks English. Now, by this time, and apparently this is pretty common, I had two people in line behind me, and I was getting pretty upset. And this guy said, and this guy was kind of mouthy with me, okay? And I said, look, pal, I mean this. I said, look, pal, I want you to get your whatever language you're speaking. I want you to get your English card out there, your English chart of phrases, your alphabet out there. Now, by this time, I'm pretty loud. And I want you to, if there's no one else that speaks English, then I want you to match the letters with what I'm telling you. Well, he didn't like that. And I asked him, I said, what country are you at? Are you in the United States? Where am I calling? And he wouldn't answer that. And he said, this is being recorded. And I said, I doggone hope, yeah, it better be being recorded. In fact, I want to copy that to play, because it was just ridiculous. It was absolutely ridiculous. So, thinking that everything was fine, the typed information, spit out wrong again. So finally, the third time, and by this time I was just absolutely bouncing up, and my wife was with me, and she was, hiding under they were just about ready to hide underneath the aisle, because I'm loaded for bear now. Now I'm loaded. When I picked that phone up the third time, and I just really, I should repent, but I ripped into the person. And I said, let me tell you something. If you don't get this right this time, I mean, I don't know what I'm going to do, but it's frustrating that here in America, we cannot get someone to speak English. Anyway, I just thought that was just an amazing and just an amazing. It really took me almost 30 minutes. Something that should have taken me 5, 10 at the most. Anyway, multiculturalism. Now, Joe, do I sound racist or bigoted? I mean, it's isn't this? I mean, it's efficiency. It's not has nothing to do with racism or bigotry, is it? Does it? Or am I just a big old bigot?
You can't communicate with somebody who doesn't speak the same language as you, obviously, but at the same time, I mean, I don't know. I wasn't there, but I do know past experiences. Walking around New York City, yelling at people to speak English, and I mean, I don't know. That's only something I think you could answer yourself. But there's a
nicely played, Joe.
I don't know what goes through your mind, what goes through your thoughts and your heart. So I can't answer that, but. I can see how it can get frustrating trying to get something done in a timely fashion and being hindered by a lack of ability to communicate in your own language, especially trying to use a service that is, you're trying to send money through a business, a third-party service, and you're not able to because of the workers' inability to speak the language using that service, the third-party service, not using American workers or however they do it. You have to look into that if you want more information as far as who outsources Western Union jobs or how that works. But I don't know. I'm sure it was a number of things.
I got to tell you, Joe, the one woman behind the counter, closer to my age, and I made this comment pretty loudly. I said, this wouldn't be so hard if this call wasn't being handled by someone in Pakistan, and the woman behind the counter nodded, gave me a thumbs up, and she says, I know, and she kind of shook her head. The other younger woman looked at me like, she gave me the stink eye. Let me tell you, she looked at me like I was, I was horrible. I was a horrible person, but. Anyway, but why do I mention this is because just think of the, we're just going to be inundated with illegal, we're already inundated with illegal immigrants, illegal aliens in this country. How much worse is this going to get? And people expect them to be assimilated into society? I don't think so. Joey, when you and I were working in Rochester, New York, we would find pockets of people from Bosnia and other locations. New York City excluded. Forget about New York City. I'm sorry, that wasn't Rochester, that was Syracuse, I believe. And talking with the locals there, they would bring up pockets of 5,000 Bosnians and settle them in Syracuse. That was Syracuse, right? That wasn't Rochester. That was Syracuse, I think. Yeah, that was Syracuse. And the same in our hometown in northwestern Pennsylvania. We have a lot of Somalians. Now, once again, I'm not speaking to anything other than the assimilation factor. They're not assimilating into our culture, our society. They are building their own, or I shouldn't say building. They're just gravitating to their own settlements and maintaining their language, maintaining their customs, and shunning everyone else. So I just don't see this ending well or progressing well for this mass immigration that we're experiencing, and we will continue to experience, just like back in 1965 with that immigration, with the mass amnesty from Johnson. So this is the reason I mention it. I really believe that we have a problem. But folks, before we go any further, let me just address one other thing here too, because I think this is important. It's interesting when we're doing an investigation, when both Joe and I are doing an investigation, we rely on getting documentation, for example. Recall when Internet researcher Butter Dieselian was on the program not too long ago. What was that, about a week ago? And she came on the program and was talking about getting records from the state of Hawaii, the Department of Health in the state of Hawaii, and using a number of methods: direct queries, written letters, and also the Freedom of Information Act. Well, what she got via the Freedom of Information Act was heavily redacted material, and also information that records did not exist. So now we know that for a number of things, the Freedom of Information Act is an effective tool, but we also have to realize, I think we've got to put our big boy pants on here and realize that the Freedom of Information Act is only as good as the recipient's willingness to provide the information. Now, I know that you'll say, well, there's safeguards built in there, and obviously things are, it would work. The Freedom of Information Act works. Just look at Judicial Watch. Look at Larry Klayman. Look at this. Look at it. Yes, I understand that, but there are exceptions. And I came across this, and I want to really hit hard on this, and then I'm going to turn this back over to Joe. But if everyone recalls, and I'm sure if you're old enough to recall this, or if at least have learned about it, the McCarthy hearings, and of course the hearings about the House Un-American Activities Committee and all of that. Well, M. Stanton Evans wrote a book called Blacklisted by History, the Untold Story of Senator Joe McCarthy. And ladies and gentlemen, if you think for one moment that the Freedom of Information Act, the FOIA, is the be-all and end-all, then let me just refer you to the prologue section of the book by M. Stanton Evans. Because it was in the peacetime summer of 1946, which was the first such summer and a half a decade, the State Department, or a State Department official by the name of Samuel Klaus, he drafted a long confidential memo about the grave security problems that were plaguing the department. It was a 106-page report. It was dated August 3rd, 1946, and it had just amazing revelations. It discussed, among other things, the number of Soviet agents said to be on the payroll at State. Alleged Communist Party members there in their department, or in the department, described as suspects or communist sympathizers. There were about 33 people, interesting number altogether. The names, one of the names, by the way, was Alger Hiss. They had been compiled by the state's security screeners. Well, now think again, or just remember, this is the summer of 1946. A memo by Samuel Klaus. In 1950, 4 years after that, at the height of the loyalty security furor then raging around the State Department, Senator Joe McCarthy from Wisconsin learned about the memo. And he made a pretty big stink about it. And thanks to his pressure, a Senate subcommittee chaired by Senator Millard Hidings from Maryland requested, he requested a copy of the memo from the department, and he ultimately received one. Thus, one of the most revealing documents ever compiled, ever put together about communist infiltration of the United States government was supplied to Congress. However, and this is where it gets really interesting, thereafter, so far as the public record shows, the Klaus memo would mysteriously vanish. And here's what caught my attention. As I was reading this book once again, in the National Archives of the United States, there are at least two places where that report should have existed. One is the Legislative Archive of the Tidings Panel, which was, that panel, or the that panel was weighing the McCarthy's charges of State Department security breakdown. There should be a copy in there. The other place would be in the papers of Sam Klaus himself. Those papers are held at another section of the archives. Wouldn't you know? Here comes M. Stanton Evans doing research about the McCarthy era and about Joe McCarthy. He goes to the archive, and guess what? The memo's missing. Not just in one place, but both places. The file contained, in one of the locations of the two, the file contained a note or a notice where the memo had been saying it was withdrawn from the archives 1950, not in 1953, or 55, or 60, or 70, or 80, or not even in 1990, but in 1993, in March of 1993, almost a half century after it was written. So somebody took that document in 1993, March 1993, a 106-page document. They ripped it out of the National Archives and walked out the door with it. Yeah, Sandy burglar, right? Maybe. But why? And there were other colluding documents that would not only prove the communist infiltration of our government, but also newspaper. And folks, this is where it becomes extremely relevant to today. McCarthy made a speech in, I think it was West Virginia, and the papers at the time reported upon this speech. I'm not going to read anything from this, but okay. Well, I'm just going to paraphrase something here. McCarthy had made a speech. It was very detailed in West Virginia, and the Wheeling Intelligencer covered that speech, and in fact had a copy of that speech. Well, when Mr. Evans went to the newspaper, the Wheeling newspaper, the Intelligencer no longer had a morgue of stories from the public or from the 1950s. Instead, back issues of the paper were now on microfilm, and please listen carefully when I say that word, microfilm, at the Wheeling Public Library. Okay, fair enough, right? The library was only a couple of blocks away. It didn't seem like an overwhelming problem, according to Mr. Evans. So he goes to the to the public library. But you know what he found? Here's what he found. All issues of the paper dating to the 19th century were all on microfilm and in their appointed places, except the issues that he was looking for. Conspicuously absent were editions for January and February 1950, the sequence jumping without explanation from December 1949 to March of 1950. So he writes a letter to the librarian and such, asking for an explanation, and he never got a reply. What would you do then? Well, hey, let's go to the Library of Congress. They maintain back issues of numerous journals from across the country, thinking that they might have the Intelligencer in its archives. And indeed, the library does have such a collection. But you know what? The very same issues were missing. Gone. Poof. They had no copies of the Intelligencer prior to August 1952. You want to talk to me about the Freedom of Information Act? You don't think this is back in '93 when Mr. Evans was doing his investigation? What's happened since then? I mean, that's 20 years ago, 21 years ago. Do you think now that those people thinking perhaps that Obama, Obama has to be a natural-born citizen because he was the newspaper accounts for Obama in Hawaii. I mean, they're all there. We can go to every library or whatever that has the different 202 newspapers, and Bill O'Reilly said so, and that's what Bill O'Reilly thinks. That absolutely, really makes the story of Obama's nativity legitimate. Well, Mr. O'Reilly, have you talked to M. Stanton Evans about his experiences with the McCarthy data and the inexplicable disappearance as late as 1993 from a 1950 speech, as late as 1993 from a 1946 memo, a 106-page memo that was unceremoniously ripped from where it should be? How can that be? Folks, we're in a time of universal deceit, and telling the truth is indeed a revolutionary act. And I've got to say this, Joe has found some incredible information about not just the alteration of history, and history is being altered, folks, but he's found some incredible information about how it will be altered in real time in the future. So for anyone, I just want to mention this because this is highly relevant to the Obama eligibility issue and its legitimacy, and people who rely on records, and people who rely solely on the sanctity of the Freedom of Information Act. Oh, really? Something stinks. And if you're a journalist out there, claim to be freelancing and not on someone else's payroll, and we can go there, but I won't. Well, you should know this. We're going to be doing a massive report on this coming up here in the near term, folks. Promise you. We've got so much to say on this with respect to Obama, his eligibility, the strange death of Loretta Fuddy, or perhaps the Subud organization, the cult of Subud, and missing documents that are missing, documents that have been changed, films, videos that have been edited. We're going to be getting into that in a very big way. So, I don't know if that makes Joe. You and I didn't discuss that part of the show prior to the show, but I don't know if that made sense. But let me tell you, we're going to be. It's coming, and the information we found is just absolutely staggering.
Switching gears here, if we can. I know a lot of people are traveling on the roads or will be traveling this holiday season, but from the looks of things, there's a lot of weather activity in the United States going on right now. We have tornadoes down in the southeast, down through Mississippi. They say that tornadoes have already killed a few people, and we have high wind up here, rain from Chicago, Detroit, New York. Throughout the next few days, we're going to see problems from snow to rain and wind. You already have, at last count, there were 72, and now they're saying a couple hundred flights have been canceled or delayed. And we just want to make sure everybody has a safe season out there. But it looks like, we're getting told that we're going to get winds up here tomorrow, gusts 55, 60 miles an hour possibly. And, we have family traveling in on Christmas. And this is when it looks like it's going to hit us the worst. Tomorrow it's supposed to be, 65 here? 60, 65. And then it's going to drop down, and we're supposed to get a snowstorm on Christmas. So very volatile weather from tornadoes in the south. Is anybody who goes into any weather channel or weather radar and looks at the storms that are covering half the United States almost, looks like it's going to be a rough 24, 48 hours. Yeah, 4 deadly storms tear through the southeast. That's as of right now. There's been tornadoes in Mississippi, and there are numerous tornado watches throughout Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, and that storm is moving north to northeast tonight. So everybody who's in the path here, keep your eye out from the winds to the tornadoes. If you're in an area that's getting hail, lightning, as it moves north, it's going to turn more into snow, rainy snow. I notice we're going to get up here some kind of ice storm on Christmas, it looks like, as the temperatures are going to go from warm to cold as we get rain changing to snow. And just looks like it's going to be very rough. So just everybody stay safe out there who's traveling. We know that's one of the most inconvenient things that can happen is on a road trip, getting caught in some kind of weather system. We've had a few times. I still have the pictures on my computer. I was going through my phone pictures from when we used to travel to Syracuse in New York City. And I got to send these pictures to you, Dad. I don't think you've seen them in a while, but they one of the Syracuse times, we were coming into Syracuse, and we got hit by what later turned into a tornado, but it was this little microburst, I guess. You can see all this debris and hail. I mean, must have took like 4 pictures in a series of seconds, but you can just see the debris flying across.
I remember it was swirling, actually. Yes, it was swirling. And by the way, somebody said our sound is rather low, and I think that was because I was talking low. And I apologize for that. Got kind of choked up when I was talking about that painting. But anyway, so just be mindful of that. Got 2 different emails here. In conjunction with what you said about severe weather in the South, tornadoes and thunderstorms today, apparently there are people trapped inside their homes in Columbia, Mississippi. I don't know whether you saw that at all, but
no, I saw 4 people died from the tornado in Mississippi area, and that there were other tornadoes touching down. And there were reports of medium to large size hail throughout these thunderstorms, and the winds are very high throughout the whole system of storms.
The people in the areas in Alabama, Louisiana, and where else here did I see this? And this, of course, obviously, if you're listening to this, I'm sure you'd know. But, bottom line here, folks, please be very careful. As Joe said, watch out. You've got a number of bad storms in southwest Alabama, in Missippi, 5 counties there, southeast Mississippi.
Yeah,
so
and they say this storm is going to move up to the, right now they say between the I-10 and I-20 corridors that will increase in size into Wednesday. Local and severe thunderstorms are in the forecast. There will be enough rainfall to cause urban and poor drainage flooding in the I-95 corridor on Wednesday into Wednesday night. One of the most common causes of flight delays is the winds. It says especially here in perpendicular runways, gusty winds from the south and east may lead to flights being delayed across the mid-Atlantic to New England and even eastern Great Lakes region on Wednesday. Increasing winds from the west and northwest may cause problems throughout the Midwest on Christmas Eve, with the risk expanding to the mid-Atlantic northeast on Christmas Day. The strongest winds are in the lower Great Lakes and New England around late Wednesday into Thursday. Gusts 50 miles an hour from the east and south will occur. Thunderstorms, turbulence during and in the wake of the storm could be a problem for flights. And it just goes on to say that this is a hazardous travel mix at one of the most busy travel times of the year. So will be a lot of dangers for travelers out there. Just stay safe and stay out of the storms if you can, because this looks to be like a nasty weather system that's moving through. And I'm looking here at a few different sites on this and looking at the radars and the forecast. We have a high wind watch until Thursday around noon, and very volatile conditions out there, as well as in the atmosphere. I wish Stan was coming on tonight. I did have some questions for him about the sunspots and some the solar flares. They're being reported differently on a few different solar sites, but I'll send him an email, see if he has time to send back an explanation as to why we would get contradictory reporting on sunspots, or solar flares, I'm sorry. But they say that there was a solar flare that was not Earth-directed that ended up snipping part of the Earth and caused some radio blackouts throughout Norway and looks like Northern European region this morning. But beyond that, we have two comments also. I don't know if you saw that. Comment Lovejoy and another comment.
The name Lovejoy, because of the Buffalo area, it does ring. I mean, it caught my attention. Two Christmas comments, or two comments, one Christmas comment, I should say. I'm not sure if that the Lovejoy comment, the one that's going to be visible?
I think so.
Okay, all right. So signs in the heavens, folks. Signs in the heavens. And the comments, of course, the thing that got me when I did scan the article about the comments, and again, I was going to defer that to Stan, but the thing that caught my attention was, why didn't we know about these before? It seems like a sudden, without knowledge or without any type of, we didn't get a lot of lead time with respect to these comments, but whatever.
Yeah. I don't know where you want to take it from here. I got a lot of, I don't know if you guys have been seeing the increase in the articles that are talking about medical record keeping turning to electronics, the hacking of those medical records, and nanotechnology. But there's been a huge increase in articles pertaining to DARPA, for one, chips implanted in your skin, and nanotechnology. I think I sent you a couple articles over the weekend, but there's been a lot more, and I've seen them on Drudge almost on a daily basis for the last week now. Digital noise on a chip can sniff out diseases, from CNN. It says it's been long known that cats and dogs with their highly developed sense of smell can be trained to identify the volatile chemicals released by human illnesses, but in some cases researchers have even trained household pets to detect cancer or predict epileptic seizures. But what if we could fine-tune that sense and put it into a microchip, allowing us to create a breathalyzer for diseases? This is what's being talked about in this article. Dr. Andrew Coel, the inventor of the microchip spectrometer technology, at the heart of this digital noise, the technology will allow us to do just that, is already here, he says. We can detect down to parts per billion levels. To give you an analogy, that's equivalent to one drop of an Olympic-sized swimming pool. The sensor, which is no bigger than a dime, works by creating a spectrum of what chemicals are in the air, then identifies each chemical unique makeup. If the sensor is set and calibrated to a certain level, it will trigger an alarm. And then go on to say what's amazing here is, you'll be able to take this chip and put it into your skin, and we'll be able to get a medical reading about your blood pressure, your vitals, and then through these microprocessors, they'll be able to tell what diseases you have going on, and what other illnesses are in your body. And these new mobile health devices, they call them, are being developed through the nanotechnology and through other think tank, mega government and private corporations. And what they want to do is, as we've talked about many times, use these miniature microchip processors to implement them as part of the electronic health records. And from Forbes writing an article, How to Sell a Nanotechnology Revolution, this week, to DARPA developing implants that could heal soldiers on the battlefield, both in body and mind. There's just an influx of these medical papers out here. Today, this is the latest one. Hackers may target the healthcare industry. Briefly skim through this. 2015 could be the year of the hospital hack. Healthcare organizations store more medical records and other information insecurity, it says. Along the vast troves of credit card information and celebrity snapshots, hackers have stolen a record number of medical records from U.S. healthcare facilities this year. In 2015, attacks targeting health data will become even more common, according to security researchers. Carl Leonard, principal security analyst for WebSense, says hackers are breaking into the computer networks of healthcare facilities with increasing frequency and taking valuable personal information that is often secured improperly. In August, WebSense researchers reported that over the previous 10 months, they had observed a 600% increase in attacks on hospitals. And they predict that hospitals in 2015 and the healthcare industry will see a substantial increase in the theft of data. They go on to say that the medical organizations around the world are now switching to electronic medical records, and computer security is not a high enough priority during this process, he goes on to say. And this leaves the easy, fast access to medical information trumping security, with various studies showing that cyber thieves have identified health data as soft targets. So in a time where our nation is switching the way we not only conduct the healthcare system, but taking the medical records from a paper to a paperless or wireless or computer electronic health record, that these changes are being done, and at the time the changes are being done, they are not securing the information properly across the healthcare industry. And due to this lack of security...
You know what, Joe? I mean, let's put this in perspective. This is extremely sensitive information of the healthcare industry. The hacking.
Oh yeah.
And just to give you a little bit of a kind of a backdrop here. Think of it this way, folks. If you shopped at Staples, the office store, if you shopped at Staples for, I think it was like a month. Well, it was between August 10th and September 16th of this year. It's very possible that your data was exposed, and Staples was hacked. The grand total of at-risk customers, this according to Staples, comes out to about 1.16 million. And that, again, if you go back in time, compare that to 53 email addresses that was stolen, the worst retail breach ever, way worse than it was made out to be. This is back at the Home Depot in April or May of this year. The breach occurred at the airport parking service at various locations. Target was breached, Kmart, J.P. Morgan. So all of this, I just wanted to kind of let you know, folks, that we know that hacking is really on the increase. And as the program unfolds today, we should address the Sony hacking situation too. Not to get off your topic, but we're going to get right back to the healthcare here, folks. And I don't know whether you heard this or not. It appears that Sony is going to release in a limited basis that movie that supposedly was at the epicenter of the brouhaha over the hack of Sony. Something really stinks with respect to that. So go ahead. I don't want to take you off. I don't want to derail you, because I think that it's very important as we look at the implementation of the Affordable Care Act and the records that are being placed online or within intranets. Folks, none of our information is safe anymore. And this is also going to lead, you had mentioned about the storage of chips or storing information on chips. What better way, for example, to convince a mind-numbed and not too cognizant public? Well, because of all of these breaches, we need to implement something that you can carry with you, that you can't lose. You can lose a card. How many people lose their ATM cards or driver's licenses or whatever? So we've got to have this foolproof system, because this information is so important. Enter the infrastructure for perhaps the mark of the beast. So I'll just let you continue, Joe. Go ahead with the health, because I believe this is where it's going to really originate at this level, in this venue, in this area.
Yeah, they go on to say that the hackers are labeling the health records as soft targets. This article goes on to say that credit card information is less valuable on the black market than it was several years ago, and that the market now is flooded with credit card information is becoming less useful without supporting identification information. Medical records, however, often contain both identification information, such as Social Security numbers, and financial information. This can be enough to build a near-complete picture of an individual, and such information can command hundreds of dollars from black market customers wanting to impersonate someone for the purpose of accessing bank records or drug prescriptions, they go on to say. Hackers now have almost a big data mentality, Jackson says, in that they routinely deal with huge amounts of information and can draw correlations between different parts of stolen data to piece together whole identities. Now, in an article from the Associated Press today, they say in the first kind of case, the Federal Trade Commission is targeting a data broker for allegedly selling sensitive consumer information, including bank account numbers, to markets that authorities said the broker knew had no legitimate need for it, basically selling huge amounts of data to black markets or, computer hackers. In the complaint, the commission charged that Arizona-based Leap Lab bought the payday loan applications from people strapped for money and then sold their data to third parties who most often weren't lenders at all. The payday loan applications contain sensitive information such as consumer bank, customer numbers, Social Security numbers, routing, and account numbers. Payday loans are typically small, short-term loans with extremely high interest rates that are efficiently used as pay advances on a borrower's next paycheck. There are people who can't at least afford to have their money taken out of their accounts because they need the money in the first place to pay their bills, James Cohen said, an associate director of enforcement at the commission. Leap Lab, the commission says, knew some of the third-party markets were not online lenders, and in many cases, unauthorized withdrawals were being made from bank accounts. And it goes on to say how this has damaged and possibly made even more millions of people and their information given out or sold to third-party or black market information collectors through this Leap Lab company. As I said earlier, the Federal Trade Commission is suing this data broker over the consumer info that was sold to these scammers. But what peace of mind or what can the consumers do? I mean, you see the FTC suing them, but what are consumers left to do when their money has been taken out of their bank, when their identity has been used by somebody who sold their, we'll say this company is responsible for your bank account getting accessed and your money taken out? What remedies are there for consumers to, hold this person accountable for selling their data? This is an issue we're going to see a lot more in the headlines in the near future as the healthcare industry is moving towards what they call, the least burdensome approach and the paperless, revolution that we're going to see, the mobile health, as we talked about, through the chip. This is what they're moving towards. And we're going to see more and more of this until it gets to the point where, through an emergency style, and they have this already in law under an emergency provision, how to implement these mitigation techniques, they call them, for a way to stop the hacking. They say they'll be unhackable by creating some kind of algorithm that creates a huge number style password that nobody will be able to get into. And this is what part of the debates are. And if you saw this today, Obama rules, they pushed through 1,200 new regulations just before the new year. It says the Obama administration is cramming like college students trying to study for a final exam, publishing more than 1,200 new regulations in the last 15 days alone. Energy and environmental rules are the biggest category, with 139 published federal government in the last 15 days, published by the federal government in the last 15 days, from the new regulations on the EPA's coal ash rule to finalizing the new EPA standards and other final rules that are from the FDA, EPA, as well as rulings on healthcare, on the healthcare law. And I don't know how many times they've changed the healthcare law now by introducing new laws through the Federal Register or regulations, but it has been at least 40,000 law changes since the law was passed. So we're coming up on a time now. 2015 is a new year. People are going to start to see the fees associated with not having health insurance being imposed on them by the IRS. They're going to begin to see the push towards, whether it's through another cybersecurity attack, and I see we're coming up against the top of the hour, so we can get into this on the other side, the Sony hacking scandal. They are now saying, people are now saying, news reports are saying that North Korea had nothing to do with this at all. And I would believe that to be true. I don't know, this movie was about North Korea. I don't know what the purpose of this hack was, or alleged hack, if it was for, getting people to go see this movie, or if it was for a completely different purpose, for cyber insecurity, or both.
I got some thoughts on that, Joe, and we're going to definitely get into this on the other side of this hour, because I do believe our attention is being directed to this, and I think this is a multifaceted, multi-purpose news story, and I think it's extremely important, not for the reasons, however, we're being told. North Korea, it's interesting, too, and if I could take this as well, it's interesting, North Korea lost their internet service for 9.5 hours yesterday.
2 outages today. So
yeah. But really? Okay. I specifically, just to kind of think ahead a little bit, I do believe that China, perhaps, may be involved. But I also am looking at a different angle as well. And if you go back to 1968, and you go back to the attempt by Russia, by Russia to really start a war between the United States and China. Folks, in 1968, there was a nuclear sub, the K-129, that blew up in the Pacific. You've heard me talk about this before. The intent there was to create this, to send a nuclear missile, hit Hawaii, and then blame China, or have China being blamed, and then, of course, Russia would take over the United States after the United States and China got through beating each other up. So, warring with each other. And I say that only because when you think of North Korea as a proxy nation state of China, we know that the North Koreans really, I'm looking at North Korea, I'm looking at this movie, and it could even be possible that the movie itself was part of a false flag operation. We know how much John O. Brennan likes movies, don't we? Like The Innocence of Muslims. But that said, could it very well be that perhaps China could be, although China is, or North Korea is a nation state of proxy of China, could it be that maybe ultimately investigation might blame Russia at some point? I've got some thoughts on this, and then we'll address all of these, Joe, and your additional research after the break. I do want to say that it was 101 years ago, of course, when back in early December of 1913, the Senate debated the Federal Reserve Act, and of course, it was signed into law by Woodrow Wilson. But this is a time now, 101 years ago, under the cover of Christmas, the Christmas holiday, that America was forced, that the Federal Reserve Act was forced upon America. And if you look back time, in 1913, when we weren't paying attention, or our grandparents weren't paying attention, our great-grandparents, or whatever the case might be, now is the time to watch what happens, watch what people are doing when we are actually otherwise preoccupied with the holiday activities. Folks, you're listening to a very special edition of the Hagmann Hagmann Report, our last broadcast until Christmas Day. We will be live on Christmas Day, coming to you. And I just want to thank everyone again for your kind. I'm just kidding. Thanks for being so kind to us, Cynthia. You know who you are. Thank you so much for being kind to us and for helping us out with respect to all of our broadcasting issues, Cynthia. God bless you. Before Joe and I were talking during the break, which is amazing. I was talking and listening at the same time. Hard to do. But folks, did you hear about this? Before we get further into this medical stuff, which is extremely important, but did you hear, if you go to silverdoctors.com, Ukrainian Central Bank admits that they were conned into exchanging their gold reserves for, are you ready for this? Lead bricks. Did you hear about this?
I heard about this. $300,000 worth.
Excuse me? 300,000?
300,000, yes. And there's a lot wrong with this.
No.
$300,000 in gold missing from Ukraine Central Bank after swap for lead bricks. This was reported by Russia Today on the 22nd, yesterday. It says, cunning fraudsters have conned the Ukrainian Central Bank branch in Odessa into buying $300,000 worth of gold, which turned out to be lead daubed with gold paint.
Yeah, okay, so stop right there, because $300,000 of gold in when you're talking about the kilo bars or bigger than that, what they just have 3 or 4 in their pocket and they just swap this out? Because the $300,000, I would bet that at least 2 people, 3 people I know listening, and probably have more than that in their basement or they're in their mattress or in their safe or whatever, wherever you put gold kilo things.
Yeah.
I don't know. Where do you put them?
I was reading in the comment section, actually, where I found some interesting information. One of the commenters points out that $300,000 worth of gold is not even one $400 gram bar, first of all. And they go on to say that the weight ratio between gold and tungsten, what do they do here? Grams divided by, I don't know how they figure it out, but that tungsten is much closer. The specific gravity is only a few points away from tungsten in gold, whereas the lead is like half the weight of gold almost. And that anybody who even just picked this up would or should have known. They don't believe that this is any type of, and this is from some of the people in the comment section of this article, but they, point out different irregularities with this story and why this is even a story at such a low amount. But in the article, something interesting is said here. In November, the central bank reportedly lost $12.6 billion in gold reserves, putting their total stockpile just over $120 million. However, the central bank reports the foreign currency and gold reserves stood at $9.97 billion at the end of November. So there's a big discrepancy here and a real lack of information. I think we're seeing there's something going on here, and we're not getting all of the facts, because you don't lose $12.6 billion in gold quietly.
Well, no, you don't, and we also have to put this in the confines of Ukraine. The first people on the ground in the Ukrainian uprising were who? They were the IMF, backed by who? By the CIA and Western intelligence. Folks, this is an economic war, and what we're doing here, and I think that this Sony hack, if we expand our minds a little bit, and we look at the Sony hack, which began, at least according to all public records, began on November 24th of this year.
The Cuba, we can't forget Cuba.
Yes, that's right.
3 countries left without a central bank after the Mideast destabilization the U.S. conducted, which are 3 countries left without a central bank: Cuba, North Korea, and Iran. What do we see? It's just this constant, We looked 10 years ago, 11 years ago, there was 12 to 13 countries without a central bank, and those were all the countries from Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, Syria, etc. Those are off the list. Now there's 3. Well, we see what the president did with Cuba. We see North Korea in the news, and we see Iran obviously will be the last one. They're saving something special for that, I think. But there's no coincidence here with what we saw with Obama do with Cuba and the lack of their being one of the last 3 countries with a central bank. I'm sure the actions Obama took were only to fill an end of those means.
And as we're talking about this, I'd also urge everyone to ask themselves, where do the list of dead bankers fit into this? We've got well over 4 dozen dead bankers, and the bankers have been very prominent, not only in the electronic exchange or the electronic or the internet. That's the wrong word. But at the helm of the electronic exchange part of things, but also a great many of them have been involved in the precious metals market. Now, I did speak with V, and for those, and I just want to mention this, for all of those people who have emailed me over the last, couple of weeks saying, get V back on, V, the guerrilla economist. We've talked to him, and in fact, we'll get him back on. It's just a scheduling issue right now. So just be very patient. And I think that V has got a lot to say. You can visit his website, roguemoney.net, and get information there. Of course, that's a subscriber-based website, $3 a month, $2.99 a month, I think it is. It's worth the price of admission, I'll say that. But we're going to have him back on to talk about all of this. But what we're seeing, folks, on a larger scale, even as we talk about, and it seems like a stretch to connect what Joe's talking about is the implantable chip, the hacking of the databases of the healthcare industry, within the healthcare industry, and we look at the whole global situation with the 3 countries without central banks left. We know that they're going to fall to the globalist bankers, of course, but the other part of this, the other side of all of this, as we see all of these headlines, seemingly disparate headlines in the news. You've got the Sony issue. You've got Ukraine. You've got this story about the Ukrainian sham of these gold or lead, the lead bars daubed in gold paint. All of these are interconnecting.
It goes on to say here that since this discovery, the national bank no longer buys precious metal over the counter, as it cannot be sure of its authenticity, says the first deputy head of the National Bank of Ukraine.
It would seem to me that there would be safeguards in place. Obviously, what you were referring to before about the difference in density between tungsten and lead, it would be obvious to those who handle the gold that the density, the weight would be much different. The ratio, and I've seen ratios like you had mentioned earlier. I don't have them in front of me, but it's significant enough to know that you've been had. You're not talking about dumb people here, ignorant people who are doing this. You're talking about people with experience. This story was tossed out there for a specific reason, and we're searching for that reason right now. We think that, and we were talking with Joe and I were talking about this, we do believe that there is, in fact, something to this with respect to our gold. What's gold? And did you notice the gold that was repatriated to, my goodness, where was this? Was it the Netherlands or? I'm drawing a blank here, but it was connected to the downing of the MH17 flight, or the Malaysian Airlines flight over Ukraine. Anyway, all of this, folks, we can't make this stuff up. I mean, and if it seems like we're having some sort of stroke as we're talking on the air here about these headlines and not making any sense, because it's a jump, for example, to make a connection between the story about gold and the story about Ukraine, and then of course Cuba, and then the Sony hacking thing. None of these stories are what they appear to be, and the lip service paid to these stories by the mainstream media, by Brian Williams and such, and others on the TV. Folks, I'm going to tell you right now, you're not getting the full truth. Obviously, you know that. But there is this connection and this golden thread, pardon the pun, but a golden thread that's running through these stories. And with that, this golden thread appears to be, well, economic in nature. And I do believe the basis for World War III, which is already, in my view, in my estimation, underway. So having said all of that, we are headed headlong into 2015, a very specific economic, I shouldn't say economic, not just economic, but asymmetrical war between the globalists. You see, the globalists, they want to consolidate and centralize and rule over everything, and they will. But in the meantime, they are fighting amongst themselves, and that's what we're seeing right now. And I had mentioned this before. It's almost a friendly fighter to see who will be on top, there are sexual connotations to that. I don't mean to sound gross or even like I'm taking a left-handed turn here, but really, when you look at things, you've got to look at the news, look at the headlines like you're looking at a three-dimensional chessboard, and understand that there's forces well beyond the players that are playing and the pieces that we don't even know exist that are affecting the play. And that is what's taking place. So all of these headlines, this Sony hack, really troublesome to me, given the fact that now Sony is saying, well, we're going to release this film. Really? People will be saying, well, this has just been a publicity stunt. I'm not so sure about that. I would suspect that they're exploiting the publicity surrounding this, but the damage that this has caused.
Yes and no to the publicity.
Okay.
Stunt. Listen to this. I don't know how many of you guys heard this today. Cyber Command investment ensures hackers targeting U.S. face retribution. Pentagon budget documents detail growing military commitment to cyber warfare. Now, this is from the Washington Times, released today. In the shadows of the Sony hacking incident and North Korea's massive internet outage, the Pentagon has quietly built a multi-billion-dollar cyber warfare capability and trained its commanders to integrate these weapons into the battlefield plans. And it goes on to say U.S. Cyber Command was officially stood up in 2010, based out of Fort Meade in Maryland, the suburbs of Maryland, of the nation's capital, consolidating intelligence and cyber warfare capabilities of the Army, Air Force, Navy, Marines under one house. Soon, billions of dollars were being invested into the concept that cyber attackers targeting America should be prepared to sustain their own damage. Little has been discussed in public about U.S. Cyber Command specific capabilities since the budget documents detail a growing commitment to this form of warfare. The Pentagon cyber warfare budgets has grown from $3.9 billion in 2013, $4.7 billion in 2014, and an estimated $5.1 billion in 2015. It goes on to say the first commander of U.S. Cyber Command, Army General Keith Alexander, gave Congress in 2013 one of its first public overviews of how quickly a large offensive cyber warfare mindset was speeding across the Pentagon. In military parlance, it means normalizing cyber operations into the daily routine. We have no alternative but to do it so, because every world event, crisis, trend now has a cyber aspect to it, and decisions we make in cyberspace will routinely affect our physical or conventional activities and capabilities as well, General Alexander told lawmakers. Normalizing cybersecurity requires improving our tactics, techniques, procedures, as well as our policies and organizations. It also means building cyber capabilities into doctrine, plans, and training. and building that system in such a way that our combatant commanders can think and plan while integrating these capabilities, cyber capabilities, in the air, land, and sea dominions, he said. And it goes on from there.
Okay. Let's just for a moment here. Let's contain the conversation to Sony, for example, for reasons that will become clear. If you look at different locations who have different security experts and security companies who have looked at this, first of all, the first indication. Let's go back to the root. Let's go back to the first indication of the cyber attack or this alleged hacking incident with Sony. Who made the determination initially? And I'll ask you this, Joe, if you know this. I don't think you do know this. If you do, kudos, but I don't think you do. And in fact, I didn't know it until I ferreted this out. But who was the first? Who was the first agency or company or person or whatever to connect the attack to North Korea?
Was it Sony?
No, it was New York Times. So the New York Times was actually the first out of the gate saying the hack was the result of the actions of North Korea. Now, I shouldn't say well over. We'll just put it a month later because the hack was November 24th. So we're looking tomorrow's December 24th. So 30 days have gone by. You know that the cyber security of the government of the NSA, for example, they should be able to identify exactly. They've had 30 days to identify exactly who's doing what, where, through digital footprints and fingerprints. Having said all of that, look at the volume of news and commentary that this incident has really brought forward. It's staggering. And now, it to me, this is quite not humorous, but it's telling. And now the White House, a spokesman in the White House, is called this a national security matter. But every official apparently is forgetting that Sony is a multinational company, not even based in America, but it's based in Japan. Where are Japan's statements? Where's Japan's response to this attack on one of their own companies? Have you noticed that? Have you noticed that Japan has been silent about this? And now the White House and through the Pentagon, as you had mentioned too, they're calling for, quote, a doctrine of deterrence to cyber attacks. How sweeping will this be? This is a multifaceted, in my view, incident that will have the collateral effect of this particular incident will have many facets to it. It just so you didn't have to do this, Joe, and others. What I'll do here is I'll run down just kind of a few bullet points because we have to resort to bullet points, don't we? When we're looking at this, the anti-war blog. Well, okay, I'm going to identify who wrote them. The anti-war blog reports that emails from the Sony leak show that the U.S. State Department heavily influenced the ending of the movie The Interview. Now, this is all connected to this, so as to encourage assassination and regime change in North Korea. Wow, where have we heard that the U.S. has actually engaged in regime change? Well, Egypt and every country in the Middle East, Arab Spring, for crying out loud. So the U.S. State Department has heavily influenced the ending of the movie, The Interview, to encourage assassination and regime change in North Korea. I'm getting reports, and if we have anybody from BTR on listening to this tonight, getting reports from numerous people that we are not broadcasting on BTR.
Yeah, we have, 3 or 4 emails here? I see
Yes.
that.
Okay. Anyway, continuing on with what I was saying, more lawsuits have been filed against Sony. The first lawsuit was filed by an ex-employees, plural, over health information being disclosed. What were we talking about earlier? That very same issue. There's overlap here with this. The second came from two more former employees of Sony. And the third class action suit from two additional former employees. The Hollywood Reporter writes that South Korean activists plan to drop copies of the interview onto North Korean soil via balloon, a tactic they previously used to deliver other items. Okay. After the movie theater chains dropped the interview from their upcoming lineup, one Texas theater refused to let the terrorist hackers win, so they plan to give out free toy guns and show Team America World Police. Now, unfortunately for them, well, Paramount Pictures stepped in and says, no, you don't. No, you don't. They banned the movie showing altogether. Now we see that being backed up, them backing away from that. And we've seen over the recent days here, coverage of this incident expand exponentially as the ramifications develop. BBC has stated, they've just put a lot of coverage of these events, as well as outlets all over the world has been covering this. It's very interesting how this has really galvanized the media. RBS executives traveling here recently observed that every airport they visited, when I say RBS, it's risk-based security at riskbasedsecurity.com, covering this very well. They're an internet security concern. When they were traveling, when representatives of that company were traveling, every airport they visited, CNN was showing, was actually giving nonstop coverage to the Sony hack. Really? Now, it's interesting to point out, too, that maybe not all Sony employees got the message about the interview being canceled, because a day after that decision was made, and it was covered widely in all media outlets, E! Entertainment reported that a new trailer for the movie was posted to the official Sony YouTube page. Well, right after that broke, right after the E! Entertainment, the trailer was, the YouTube video was made private. And Deadline Hollywood reports an interesting sub-story about George Clooney starting a petition to encourage Sony not to give in to the hackers' demands. And despite his clout, not one industry leader or executive would sign it. Nobody. And if you look as well, and just a couple more here, Obama, of course, he stated that he feels Sony pulling the movie was a mistake. Where does Obama figure into all of this in terms of this? Now, if you look at this as a national security matter, how can it be, if we're talking about a concern, a Japanese-based concern, this would really be more for the Prime Minister of Japan to make a statement about this than Obama. But given the fact that we have Sony here in Hollywood, I suppose Obama does have some ability or some, we'll give him some leeway in making any comments. But just imagine this. Obama stated that he feels Sony pulling the movie was a mistake and has since encouraged the public to go to movies. Isn't that a rather odd thing, Joe, for him to say? Think about this. We think, and ladies and gentlemen, too, and folks, we're going to open the phone lines as well here at the bottom of the hour, 661-244-9839, so line up now. But the statement, I heard this, and folks, I don't know whether you caught the statement from Obama saying that, look, pulling the movie was a mistake. So I would urge everyone to go to the movies. It's a rather cumbersome, odd approach to the Sony hack. I don't know what you think about this, Joe, if you think that there's any there to this. But his comments mimic many others in that their actions set a very dangerous precedent where we can be too easily influenced by bad actors. And the attribution of this hack. Who is responsible for it? This, after doing research on my end here and talking with other security security experts, I'm no security expert with respect to the internet. This had to be done at a government level, like the NSA. And while our eyes are all focused on Sony as when it comes to hacking, let's put this into perspective. As we're still focusing heavily on the Sony breach, dozens of other companies and organizations have been compromised in the last few weeks. These include a very interesting compromise at the Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers, ICANN, and a huge breach at Staples, as I mentioned earlier, that resulted in details of, well, I'll just say 1.5. The numbers range from 1.1 to 1.6 million. We'll just say 1.5 million credit cards being stolen during that time period between August and September of this year, or August, I believe that's what it was. So, folks, and finally, when you look at the going back and forth, the back and forth machinations of Sony about releasing the interview, they finally said, okay, we're going to release it. They appear to have settled upon releasing it via their own video on demand service. There's something that there are many things that just don't add up about this. Many, many things. And we really need to take a good hard look at exactly what will be the result of this. To really get into this, and this is another issue as well. According to all public reports, the group taking responsibility for this particular breach is called, Joe, what's it called? GOP, right? That's at least that was the public part of this. The Guardians of Peace. Well, they made their contact information available for a brief time. In fact, riskbasedsecurity.com, you can go there and really they've got some extensive coverage on this. But the Guardians of Peace made their contact information available for a brief time. RBS researchers used that opportunity to contact, or at least make contact with the group. And what they got was a response saying, I am the head of GOP, meaning Guardians of Peace. I appreciate you for calling us. The data will soon get there. You can find what we are or what we do at the following link. Well, the link provided led to a Facebook page that was not in use. What does that mean? What's the significance of that? You would think that if they were really wanting credit, that there would be something a little bit different, or to be handled a little bit different. It was on a month ago tomorrow. It was a Reddit post that really exposed the Sony Pictures hack breach. And don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, it was about, 3 years ago, there was a large series of attacks against Sony. That became public. The movie leaks, I think, are perhaps just red herrings, in my view. the first leak, the leaks that first occurred, and just to kind of give a recap of this, because I think it's important kind of to take a look at this from the bird's eye view, and I'll stop after this. There were multiple leaks. The first round of leaks, this is after the hack, then the leaks occurred. The first round began about December 1st. They began, the Guardians of Peace, reportedly, it was the Guardians of Peace. We know nothing, really nothing authentic about the GOP or Guardians of Peace, and I find the acronym interesting. But they began publishing the full cache of data files taken from Sony's servers, with the first chunk of, well, there was nearly 25 gigabytes of files that were compressed. Well, and it's interesting, and folks, the internet professionals out there, but ladies and gentlemen, think about this. I find it extremely telling and extremely interesting that the hacking entity or the alleged hackers used compromised servers at Sony's own network to upload and seed the various torrents for the leaked data. So it was almost like not only, and I heard it explained this way. Yeah, this whole thing, I heard it explained this way. You'd be like a jewel thief going into someone's house, robbing them of the jewels, of the jewelry, leaving the house. But before they leave, they torch the place. Is that the MO of a jewel thief? All I'm asking you to do is just widen your focus on this. Don't focus on what we're being led to focus on, but widen your focus on this. I do believe that there's a multi-level purpose of this, and I do believe that it is geopolitical in nature, but I also believe, too, with all of this talk about the Internet, the kill switches, the Internet regulation, and the recent ICANN breach, and ICANN is the service that really assigns the names and such to websites. I think we're looking at something much greater than the sum of its parts. The end game here is much greater than the sum of the parts I just mentioned. And I do think you're on to this too, Joe, in terms of the health information, because a lot of health information was released. Don't forget, remember back in early December, a lot of health information about the employees and others regarding Sony was released publicly.
We got a question from an emailer. And folks, if you want to call in, 661-244-9839, 661-244-9839. We'll be taking your calls the rest of the evening. An emailer, Doug, asked this. He says, do you think Obamacare was all created as the seed for nanotechnology and medical records for scare tactics? In other words, is this all part of the plan? And I say to that, absolutely. Obamacare laid the groundwork for, they already had the plans to roll out this system of electronic health records and move towards the electronic health records as a whole. They already had the ideas of the nanotechnology through DARPA and other U.S. government research and think tanks coming together, and they needed a groundwork, a national law compelling all Americans to have to do something to implement it. Now, it's only phase one, it's only part one of this, and we're seeing the early impacts of this, but when, all the medical records are electronic, and then they want people to be part of their system by using their microchip devices, a lot of people aren't going to be comfortable with that, so they're going to work it in either through emergency actions, making it mandatory, kind of like a vaccine in the middle of a health crisis of a certain disease, or they'll do it slowly through pilot programs, like they've been doing it with the pets. They'll move to VA hospitals, to children wards, and they'll make it law that way. And you'll get caught up. If you need health care, you're going to go to a hospital. They're going to tell you need to have, a wristband or a tattoo or a chip in order to receive your health care. Kind of just like what the Bible says about the mark of the beast. You won't be able to participate in the community if you're not part of the community. And they're setting up a community, if you want to call it that. So yes, it was the groundwork. It was needed. And if it wasn't Obama that was president, it would have been Hillary care or Mitt Romney care. I mean, they had when we look back at the Obama-Romney election, Mitt Romney was the one who rolled out the universal health care for the state of...
But hold on a second, because the emailer, the Doug, and thanks for your question. If you look at the health care bill, and how many people among all of us have read the health care bill? I know Joe has, in the additional changes to the health care bill. But if you look at this, and if you look at our office, it looks like a paper monster threw up in here. But inside the health care bill, inside Obamacare, which your elected representatives voted for without reading, there's a section called Subtitle C-11, Section 2521, National Medical Device Registry. You talked about it, Joe. You found this, and, at least, others I'm sure found it, but you found this and focused on this. Now, what this does, okay, it's the National Medical Device Registry. It states, and I quote, the Secretary, meaning the Department of Health, shall establish a National Medical Device Registry. Now, parenthetically, it says, in this subsection referred to as the registry. So just keep that in mind. Okay, the National Medical Device Registry is referred to as a registry. The Secretary shall establish a National Medical Device Registry to facilitate analysis of post-market safety and outcomes data on each device that A, is or has been used in or on a patient, and B, is a Class 3 device, or 2, is special control Class 2 device that's implantable. Now, implantable, and I didn't mean to, let me continue here just for a second here. And again, you brought this to my attention, and I just want to focus on this. Because with all of this hacking, and understand there's a conditioning process to this, the implantable, you're talking about an implantable device it's listed in the healthcare bill. It's regulated. It's actually used for medical surveillance, but it's also being used for financial surveillance as well. The records are being consolidated, but consolidated under the health registry. But the other agencies, the IRS, DHS, NSA, all of these have access to that very data on these devices, these implantable devices. Right.
The UN, the U.S. between we have here a memorandum of understanding between the United States Department of Health and Human Services and the European Commission on cooperation surrounding health-related information and communication technologies. We have monitoring progress towards universal health coverage, a country look at global levels, this from the World Bank and the World Health Organization. You have a medical device regulations, global overview of guidance principles from the World Health Organization, where in this they talk about the harmonization of medical records through different agencies in the U.S., and this is the Global Harmonization Task Force they put together to ensure cooperation between the different nations and participation of the electronic health record implementation. And as you said, it's not just for health records, it also is for financial information.
Exactly. And it's interesting to see people and see comments. Folks, when you go to articles like on Breitbart or different articles, really read the comments because you'll get an education. Some of them are pretty nasty and vulgar, but if you can get through that, you can learn a lot about the comments, because it seems to me that very slowly, incrementally, the masses, people, we are becoming, and I say we collectively, we're becoming immune to the idea of being tracked. It's almost routine now. We expect it. Look, newborn babies in the United States, they're routinely screened for a panel of genetic diseases. Their blood is taken without parental consent. States are mandating that newborns in the United States, DNA samples are taken and they're stored in state laboratories for anywhere from 3 months to indefinitely. And that depends upon the state. I would urge you to look into that, especially if you are a parent or an expecting parent or someone concerned. Let me just repeat that, because newborn babies in the United States right now, they're being routinely screened for a panel of genetic diseases. This is an offshoot or reinforced by the Affordable Care Act, but blood samples are being taken without parental consent. In certain states, and I don't have the list of states, they're mandating that any newborn child, DNA samples be taken, and they are to be stored in the state laboratory for anywhere from 3 months to indefinitely, and that depends upon your state. We are now in the final throes of this machine, and I just what we need to do, and the only thing that we can do, the only way we can win on this is not play, not cooperate. And what does that mean? That means take the penalty as opposed to being insured. If no one participated, and it may seem like I'm getting off on a tangent here, but I think, Joe, you've got a lot of information about this, and we have a lot of information about this, and we're kind of jumping all over the place tonight. But this kind of hits me a little bit hard, because, ladies and gentlemen, the only defense we have against this is if everybody just decided not to participate. I do have information, as I was going to finish my thought, that the numbers that are being touted out there with respect to the participation in the Affordable Care Act, in the state exchanges, are being inflated, extremely inflated. Even if you are engaged in securing insurance outside of the Affordable Care Act, which we are collectively here at the Hagmann and Hagmann Studios, because we're not going to participate in this Affordable Care Act, we can see the gradual merging of the private or of the outside of the plans outside of the marketplace and the insurance outside of the marketplace, gradually being pushed into the marketplace or under the umbrella of the Affordable Care Act, and this will ultimately become a single-payer system, the very type of system that Hillary Clinton attempted to establish in the 1990s, however, failed, but that's where it's going, and then we'll have a full-blown socialist system, well beyond anything we've got right now. I don't know if you were able to follow that, but the Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, if you look at it through the lens of biblical prophecy, this is setting up the infrastructure for the New World Order, the one world government, and tracking everyone. I truly believe this. And even I think Bill Gertz from the Washington Free Beacon had even referenced some of this as well. I don't recall the date, but I think you could probably check that out. And also think about this, and in closing on my comments that are kind of addressed to Doug, the emailer. Remember, look at Jonathan Gruber and look at his remarks, his remarks to the House Oversight Committee. And look at how deep this Gruber, Jonathan Gruber, 90% of the American public, voting public, never heard of this guy. Look at how deep he is involved, multi-state deep, in setting up these exchanges, being paid millions upon millions of dollars. But even that scandal shows that Obama lied to sell on this signature legislation, obviously. We know that. But the scandal proves that the press, that the media, consolidated down to a handful of owned by a handful of companies or actual people, they will cover up any lie that is out there. And this, unfortunately, shows that the American people actually believed and continue to believe in the lie. Now, if you want to tie it to Scripture, how about this? Go to 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 11 through 12. And for this reason, God will send them strong delusion, that they should believe the lie, that they all may be condemned who did not believe the truth but had pleasure in unrighteousness. So yes, I mean, that's a long answer to a simple question perhaps, but I do believe that we're seeing the groundwork. And I mean, what else? I think if we look at it, and we have to look at it through the prism of biblical prophecy. But you know, it's amazing, and I'll say this too. Isn't it amazing? People who are saying, look, that healthcare, this new healthcare, is going to destroy this country. People are saying, well, how can anything destroy the most expensive country or the expensive? People aren't buying it. People aren't believing this. People aren't understanding the magnitude of this. I see it in comments all over the place.
And the whatever you want to call them, the powers that be, these think tanks think because they've been able to maintain power or project the maintaining of the power, that this will be so for the next 10 years. That will go through the next 10 years without any type of major, or we could go through the next 10 years without the U.S. losing any kind of dominance.
You know what? I know we're getting close to the top of the hour. You're correct, Joe. And I just want to say, folks, if you haven't seen this video, well, it's actually an interview. It's not a video. Dr. Dave Jonda was interviewed by the SGT Report about Obamacare, about the Affordable Care Act. Now, he said that he described Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act as a new world order bomb designed to destroy our healthcare system, obviously, and take over our government. But he gets really down into detail. And if you've never heard of Dr. Dave Jonda, he's an orthopedic surgeon. He's the host of Operation Freedom. And he said that he read the bill several times. He said, I'm not even sure that Obama has even read it, because the things that come out of his own mouth, the things that he says, are so factually incorrect. They don't even resemble what's in this bill, now law. So, folks, Dr. Dave Jonda, that's Janda, SGT Report from December 10th. If you haven't seen that interview, definitely it's worth your time. My goodness. This is really the one of many death knells, or one of many nails in the coffin, or one of many Marxist maneuvers to take out the United States, and it's a big one. And it's got many facets to it, as does the Sony scandal hacking as well. And of course, this paves the way for the implantable chips. This paves the way for so many other things. This also destroys our economy, at least 1/5 or 1/6, depending on who you ask. And if you think, well, boy, I've heard this again and again. Well, tie all of this together. You can't look at just Obamacare, or you can't look at just the Sony hacking scandal, or you can't look at just Cuba, or none of these should be viewed as individual news stories. We need to look to see how they all fit together and how these are all racing, how we are being raced to the finish line. And that finish line is global governance, takedown of the United States, wiping out the middle class, killing off the old and the infirmed or the psychologically impaired. And attached to this as well, we'll throw this in here too, might as well, will be the gun control. This is all going headlong into a one large consolidation of power. And if you're not a part of that system, then you're not going to be able to play. You're not going to be able to work. You're not going to be able to exist within the society, within America, or any Western country where you might be hearing this from. And as a kind of a footnote to the gun control reference I just made, folks, if you have not been on Hagmann and Hagmann.com, I posted a link up there to one of the most bizarre, insane public service announcements that I've ever seen. And I've seen a lot, but this one is just so bizarre. So if you have the opportunity, go to Hagmann and Hagmann.com and click on that. That'll take you to a public service announcement. That links to a public service announcement. You got to see it to believe it. You've got to see it to believe it. Oh, so that's involving gun control, which, again, is an offshoot or a collateral effect of Obamacare. And, of course, that fits in with the end of the year signing of the small arms or the adherence to the small arms trade treaty by the United Nations. Joe, you've got all of this information and more. But, folks, we're up against a break. You're listening to a Christmas Eve edition of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. I want to thank you very much for joining us. I want to thank you, Nancy, and Courtney from the
third and final hour on this 23rd of December 2014. We will be off air tomorrow for Christmas Eve, and we will be back here Christmas night for those of you joining us late.
Yeah, exactly. And let me just say this, folks. We have a very, to me at least, we've got a very special relationship with each and every one of you. I cannot think of a better way to spend, and Joe and I were talking about this before the show, we can't think of a better way to spend the night of Christmas Day night here, at least in the East, with each one of you. And please understand this. If you are alone, or if you're not alone but lonely, that's just as bad sometimes. Or if you think you've got no one, or if you think everything is hopeless, or if you look around and your personal life is just falling apart. And I've talked to so many people, that's where they're at. Or you've got marital issues. We're not therapists. We don't no. But you know what? We've got some pretty broad shoulders, and we have a very intense protective side to us, and kind of a brother-sister kind of thing going on here, I think, or even a mother or father-daughter, father-son, whatever it is. Folks, just understand, you're not alone, because even if you are alone, you're not. I would urge everyone to really become introspective and get into the Word and understand that we'll be with you, but also, more importantly, God above will be with you as well. Something we can't do. we can be with you, in the show. But we want to speak with the people on Christmas night and on New Year's night, a renewal. We want you to know that we're going to be with you at your side if you bring us to your table, or if you're sitting in a darkened room in your easy chair, or even a straight back chair at the Y, or at a rented hotel room somewhere. Let us be with you, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. And I want to thank each and every one of you who tune us in. Let me just say this too. You got an email. John asked us, "Can you guys take a minute?" And we will take 1 minute here on the air and explain how the Dow is soaring despite our obviously failing small businesses and subsidized population. John, it's really easy. It's called high-frequency trading. It's called munging or fudging the numbers. Everything is manipulated. The numbers that you are seeing from the Dow is a result of this massive, frenzied trading activity. And I had a dialogue with V about this, the guerrilla economist. All of this is done by computers. In the insurance industry, and I'm familiar with this because of my work with fraud, there's something called churning, where agents will take different policies and just turn them over and flip them and flip them and flip them to generate commissions. At least that's the way it was a number of years ago. And that's kind of what's happening right now. All you're seeing is churning. Now, it's much more complicated than that. But really the bottom line is the numbers you are witnessing are artificially created. And V would tell you the same thing. Because there's no way to reconcile. At the end of the day, and we touched on this earlier this week or last week, at the end of the day, you've got to reconcile each account. Each trade you've got to reconcile in a ledger. Well, with the billions of trades that are taking place, you can't even reconcile the net differences between agencies. So the bottom line is, it's all fraud. It's all manipulated. It doesn't make sense. Same with precious metals. The same with every commodity. Every number is nothing more than a fraud. If you, and not you, John, but if you, John Q. Public, believe that everything is hunky dory because the Dow's at record highs, believe me, when that crash happens, when that bubble bursts, the Dow bubble, if you will, when that bursts, it's going to leave residue everywhere. And we are going to experience perhaps one of the worst times in American history. Combine that with civil war, and combine that with famine, and perhaps even global warfare. That's my belief. Hopefully, John, that kind of addresses your question. Joe?
Yeah, let's go to the phone calls. We're going to take your phone calls now. We're going to go to area code 916 first. 916, thanks for calling in. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. What's on your mind tonight?
Hey, Merry Christmas, Doug and Joe.
Merry Christmas to you, too.
Merry Christmas.
Hey, it's your shofar friend from the north section of California.
Gotta love it, buddy. Gotta love it. You got your shofar all tuned up?
I do. When we went out today down to the Capitol, did some prayer, and when we get off the phone here, I'll sound it. But, the timing of everything is lining up so perfectly with the Lord. And, they rescheduled that movie to be released on Christmas Day, The Interview, which I found, the enemy is a liar and so is his mother. But what I got today, guys, was something about the movie Selma. Have you heard about the movie Selma?
Briefly, but do explain. What I heard and read about it is rather interesting, if not potentially, dare I say, explosive on many levels. Go ahead.
Amen. And this is how it happened. I was at a tire place getting my tires, getting them changed, and I saw the interview with the movie Selma. and it had the actor being interviewed. And when he was being interviewed, I got in my spirit, effeminate. And then I saw the previews of the movie as they were interviewing him, and I could see all the protest and all that. About 4 years ago, the Lord put in my spirit when I was driving on Highway 99, the enemy wants to repeat at 1968. And as far as on my watch, that's not going to happen because we've shed too much blood. But I also know that things are going to be happening. But if we have an understanding of what God is allowing and not be ignorant to the devices of the devil, we will be able to do the exploits that God talks about in the book of Daniel. The Lord put in my spirit, look up the word Selma. This is what I have. Selma is both a feminine given name and a surname. It is an old German origin as a variation of Anselm or Anselma. Then it says meaning helmet or metaphorically protection or protected by the gods. It may also be a female form of Solomon. And so, I believe this is another part of, I got a couple scriptures. Joe, can you go to Hosea 6 and just read Hosea 6, verse 1, 2, and 3?
Sure.
While he's doing that, I just wanted to the listeners, Selma, the movie, the film, actually premiered at the American Film Institute Festival last month. Now, it's going to be released, and you're correct, caller, on Christmas Day. And they are waiting, it's going to be widely opened on January 9th of 2015. Look at the dates, folks. Both the Christmas release, the January, the 1915 release, 19, the number 19, 19.5 type thing going on as well. Are we seeing an Illuminati signature? Very astute caller. This is in my papers notes to mention, but so it's kind of divine. I think that when I say divine, divinely inspired, that you mentioned it. Go ahead, Joe.
All right, Hosea 6, verses 1 through 3. It says, "Come and let us return unto the Lord, for he hath torn, and he will heal us. He hath smitten, and he will bind us up. After 2 days he will revive us. In the third day he will raise us up, and we shall live in his sight. Then shall we know, if we follow on to know the Lord, his going forth is prepared as the morning, and he shall come unto us as the rain, as the latter and former rain unto the earth."
Amen. Amen. And, Doug, when I just go to Revelation 17, and it talks about the mystery Babylon, the great, the mother of the harlots, and the abomination of the earth. If you go to verse 11 of Revelation 17, it says, "And the beast that was and is not, even he is the eighth, and is of the seven, and goeth into perdition." Then if you go down to 14, it says, "These shall make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall overcome them." And I'm going to repeat that. "These shall make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall overcome them, for he is the Lord of lords and the King of kings, and they that are with him are called, chosen, and faithful." And I'm going to just read verse 17. I found this interesting. "For God has put in their hearts to fulfill his will, and to agree and give their kingdom unto the beast, until the words of God shall be fulfilled." And I know that this movie, both the interview and then the timing of that being released on Christmas Day, then the release of the movie Selma, and for God to and I know I'm not the only one, but this is what I found interesting. When I was explaining this on the phone to a pastor friend of mine, as I said, the protector by the gods, I looked to my right, there was a car, and I took a picture of this because this happens to me all the time, and the license plate on that car was G-O-D-T, God, T, as in truth. So there's the gods of this world, which are a lot of evil, wicked things, and you have the true one God that is raising up his remnant, the remnant that's going to do the exploits. And that's it. I just want to encourage us, and I know that God wants us to be encouraged, and just stay led by the Spirit and by His Word and by His great power and by the shofar. Let me get my shofar here. I got my little one here.
All right.
So, Lord, we just thank you, Yahweh, Yeshua, one love. Hallelujah. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Amen. And the sound of the shofar, what a fantastic sound. And folks, wow. Well, thank you, caller, so much. Thank you for that.
All right. Love you guys. Peace out.
Have a great night. All right, let's go to area code 720 next. 720, you're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Is this Joe and Doug?
Yes, it is.
Joe.
Present.
Yep. Hey, how you doing?
Fantastic.
I just wanted to call because I think we've kind of come to a time in this where we may have 3 to 5% of the people that are awake. Maybe it could be more or less. And there's probably, if you say 5%, there's probably 95% that are going to be very difficult to reach. And so because of the shortness of time now, I think we would be real lucky to get another 5 or 10%. And the best thing I wanted to try to bring here is, well, some ideas about how to weather this storm. And a lot of people talk about relocation and stuff like that. I was thinking of the term disbursement because it's about that time. And I was, because of listening to you guys and Paul McGuire and believing in a lot of, actually pretty much everything Paul McGuire says, he discusses our situation with beings of frequency as human beings. And I talked to a friend of mine last week about this, and the way I described it to him was it's kind of like a musical scale. And I think we have been in a certain note on the scale for a long, long time, centuries. And right now, I believe that there's the next note up, that frequency is being sent to us. And I do believe that's by our Creator. Now, also just want to say as an aside, I'm so close to God, I can't even tell you right now. And anybody that's close to God or medium way, just keep getting closer, and when you get there, stay there. But the thing is that where I was talking to this friend of mine about this frequency, I think right now we're in a position where there are that 3 to 5% that are aware of not really any frequency change, but we're aware that we can see everything that lower note is doing, which is why things are coming to the forefront, because we can see right through it. And I'm not saying that those people are special. What I'm saying is that those people that are kind of like the first wavers that are starting to feel it are trying to pull other people with us. And that's what you guys do. That's what all your guests do. And I think what we need to do right now is to change our philosophy a little bit to the idea of what do we got going for us? I mean, talking about all the things that are wrong, okay, I'll give you that. We live in an absolutely insane world. And it's not going to get any better anytime soon. So you move to this other way of thinking. I've been in construction all my life. I've had some severe things hit me that have taken me off that path, even though I still am in construction, but it's been kind of like having a business destroyed, things like that. And what I'm doing right now is I'm reassessing where I'm at with the idea that there are a lot of properties. If you want to know what your possibilities are, go to Realtor.com. And wherever you think might be a nice place to live, start looking for what's available there, and you might find that there's some land that's pretty cheap, and you can get a well, you can put in a septic system, whatever. There may be other properties that are there that you could buy that already have that you could fix up a little bit. All of the people that are producers in this country are the ones that maybe don't realize their power. Me, I've got all kinds of tools. I've got all kinds of knowledge. Wherever I go, I can make a living, guaranteed. And a farmer is that way. A wonderful example. Even if there's a clinic in an area that's in, a rural area, and you're a doctor or a medical personnel, you could probably do that too. Plumbers, electricians, anybody that produces something doesn't have to worry about where they live, and we got to get out of the cities. The thing that I think that's going on right now, I live in Denver, and there used to be a lot of blocks in the city and county of Denver metro area that were vacant, and they're all filling up now. And so you go downtown Denver, only half the people have the jobs, but it feels just as crowded, so that they can keep playing their card that says the world's overpopulated, which is a total joke. Drive from Denver to Lincoln, Nebraska, which is about 7 miles, and what is there in between? I mean, there's an awful lot of rural individuals that are actually out there just quietly producing, which I salute. But the thing is there's, with all of the foreclosures that have gone on and everything else in this country, there's a lot of real bargains out there that are real estate-wise where people are trying to get rid of properties. And I don't mean to, just control the whole conversation. I just, if you guys want to say something about what I've said, please do.
No, continue. Go ahead.
Well, the thing is, to me, is that it's like, the Affordable Care Act. The Affordable Care Act, I've been a business owner for 27 years, almost 28 now, and I knew it was a death throw. So I don't even think of the Affordable Care Act. I don't even have a doctor, and haven't ever. And we got to quit going to. We've got to. I think what it comes down to is we've really got to reevaluate things on a very base level. And one of those is that every time we feel a pain, don't run to the doctor. I think it's also important to realize that when you have a cold or something like that, you go to bed at night and you wake up in the morning and you can breathe and you didn't slobber all over your sheets. I mean, in other words, you heal when you breathe or when you sleep. And so then you might wonder why when you're in a hospital, the nurse comes around and takes all your vitals every hour all night long, and whoever's calling the shots on that, they're not letting you sleep. Okay, just an aside there. But right now, I'm looking at properties in rural areas that are in that line where I can go in there, I can take a year and fix it up. Maybe I can sell it later on. Maybe I like living up there, and I'm just going to stay there. But it's time for people that are listening, especially to you guys, to start having some hope and start having people talk about, I don't have any problem with the news. I don't have any problem with Bible verses or anything like that. All I'm saying is that there's got to be more time put to hope and to actual plans that can work. There are rural communities out there where there are wonderful people in the mountains west of Denver. I know a guy who told me last week that, he's building a house up there. I've known him for a long time, and he's been stopped 3 times by the cops up there in this one county, and he's gotten a warning every time. These people up there, I've seen people that have watched 2 cops go by, and they're waving to him, and the cops are waving to them and calling them by name. There are places out there that are not as insane as the cities right now. And I'm saying that most people won't move out of the cities, but the people that maybe hear this word, this train of thought, will think, we might be able to actually find a way to work around some of this stuff and get ourselves out of the main target zone. And so, it's like where one place that I'm looking at a property right now is up in the mountains, and if they wanna come, take out any houses in that area, they better be ready to fight the bears too, because there's plenty of them around there. And so it's kind of a game changer, and I do think personally that we have till that, isn't it October 15th next year or is it September 15th that final quadrad comes to an end?
Tetrad,
do you know which one?
Yeah, it's a tetrad. I don't know the exact date.
September.
I don't have the notes. Is it September? In fact, caller, what you're saying, and I have not shared this with Joe, but with regard to hope, Pastor Langford is taking up an initiative that speaks directly to hope, and we'll be announcing that here shortly and putting this on our website. It's something that's just very profound in my view, but continue. So go ahead, caller, continue.
Well, I was going to say, now there's a town west of you go into that place and there's a bunch of dumps, some places, and they just spray painted on the side of them for sale. Now, say that the producers of this country start to move to the rural areas, and then you've got these people that don't really have those skills, but they want to find a way to move and get, and if they got a house and they got $50,000 in equity, they can go down there, they can go up there, throw down $30,000, and own whatever they own for nothing. And they are surrounded by people like myself who can help them, who literally can. If they wanted me to come there and they wanted to pay me, $50 for 1 hour, and I walked the house with them. I wrote down some things. These are what I think your priorities should be. If you need help to take care of some of these things, let me know. I'm not saying that I'm going to charge an exorbitant amount of money or anything like that, but I'm going to make sure you get help. That's going to be the first thing. It's going to be people helping other people. And I think that's the direction we kind of need to move towards, is just, I originally moved to Denver from Wisconsin, and I've been looking. I looked earlier this year and last year at Realtor.com, and I went back to where my hometown was, and I had like 7 properties I wanted to look at, and the properties were fine. Well, some of them were.
Well, caller, let me stop you right now for a moment here. I understand what you're saying. Okay, I get this, but let me ask you a question. What about the single mother working as a waitress in some urban area that is just so constrained by her family situation, by her personal situation, having no money, having no support structure, unable to get out of, or currently unable, or at least that's her mindset in getting out of that situation. or someone with an infirmed parent or an infirmed child, or someone that is living in a tenement, or someone who's living with a family, surrounded by family, but they're not awake. But if they were awake, they could perhaps, move mountains. What about those people? And I'm not knocking what you're doing, because I think it's very important. But how do we get the majority of people who are really tied, duct taped to mentally or practically duct taped to their situation? What do we do for those people?
First of all, that's one reason why I wanted to call you tonight, because even, say for instance, you have a mother with a child, or a person that you're taking care of, and say for instance you happen to be a conservative or something, and the IRS is bugging you. All right, but you know a friend who lives outside of the city, and considering that friend you happen to know is also a bit hurting for money, and you just say to that person, look, my lease is due or is over in the end of January. Could I come stay with you for 2 months, and I will pay you such and such per rent? That would help the person in the other town that's a friend. That would give her 2 months to get herself or that person up on their feet there, and it would give them some hope to do it. I mean, you can always fall back and come back to the city, but to be real honest, what are the great possibilities in any city anymore? I mean, there really aren't any.
Good point. No, I totally agree.
I mean, see, I moved from Wisconsin to Denver because there was a great construction economy here at the time. And here I am, had a business that was cutting edge of commercial construction, to be honest with you, and was doing, like, my last 2 jobs, one was $1.3 million and the other one was like $900,000, and I worked up from doing $20,000 jobs when I started and everything else. You know, you get some good ones, you get some bad ones. So my last one was a situation where everybody on that job, for the general contractor, from the subcontractor, knew that construction spending in the United States had stopped. Banks were not lending. And we all knew that this job was going to last for 2 more years, and then we were going to really be hurting. So everybody was kind of just piling on everybody else, trying to find reasons to write them letters and threaten them and throw them off jobs, and then at the end it ended up being a number of lawsuits. And a lot of general contractors are doing that right now. And plus you've got construction defect law, which in Colorado is for 6 years. In other words, I can put down a product that my manufacturer will give me a 5-year warranty on the material itself, but I have to give a labor and material warranty for 6 years. And most people, that now the construction spending has come back a little bit in Denver, the new companies that are coming in, they don't know that. They just don't. And they're being set up. And it's not just that, but when they were talking about the 50 employee limit on Obamacare, there was another article that I printed out at the time, and I still have, that said, except for construction companies. Construction companies, if you have more than 5 employees, you have to have them on the Affordable Care Act. And if you don't, it's a $3,000 fine per person per year. So they don't care when they catch up to you. If it's 5 years from now, you're going to owe them, what, $45,000 for 5 years? Let's see, that's almost $250,000. You're done. You're out of business, okay? So what I'm saying is that, yes, everything that you guys have been talking about, everything that's been warned about, it's gotten to a point where you can't do anything. There is no way to have private industry in this country anymore. And that's why you just got to go small and go do your own thing and hunker down. And if that means if that lady with a small child or a person who's taking care of another person that needs a lot of care or total care, if they're getting hounded by the IRS too, and you go spend 2 months with a friend who lives in a small town 30 miles away, and I mean, you don't go down to the post office and get your address changed from your present address to hers. You get it changed from your address to a post office box up there.
So yeah, I see the tactics that you're promoting or you suggesting. Will there be if someone follows that though? Given the surveillance state that in which we live, how long can that? I mean, how long do we have under that scenario that you paint? How long does that woman have?
You mean to get away?
Yeah, I mean to keep flying under the radar. And I'm not trying to to burst any bubbles here, but we have to be realistic that I mean that'll work for a time, and we can. It's kind of like avoiding or evading service of a subpoena. You can do it for quite some time. I mean, anyone who's ever been sued and knew the subpoena was coming and didn't want to be served, you can evade service for quite a while. Number one, it gets tiring, and number two, ultimately, there are remedies to evasion of service. But having said that,
well, okay, I'm with you, Doug, and great questions to come up. First of all, a person who is in that position that can find a friend and go stay with him for a couple months, okay? Now, all I'm saying is that I think if the IRS is looking to garner money, they're going to pick the low fruit, and you just moved up on the tree, okay? You made it more difficult for them, all right? Now, have I gotten stuff from the IRS? Oh, yeah, and it's weird the way it's coming in, but I had somebody who tried to serve me at my house, and I said, well, I just kind of looked down at it, and I said, who's that from? And I said, is that from the IRS? And the postal officer said, yes. And I said, well, I don't want to sign for that. And I didn't, and they didn't serve it. And the other thing is that I received still more mail from an official up left corner of the envelope, IRS, and now get this, you probably haven't heard this one before. It said with a nice little green box this came in my mail. The green box on the top of the envelope in white letters said certified. Now, this is what I'm saying. A certified mail has to be signed for. And they sent it to me through regular mail. I can guarantee you that envelope is in my possession and has still not been opened. Because if the IRS ever comes after me, the first thing I'm going to do is throw that down in front of them, and I'm going to go, this is fraud. This was not certified mail. They can't put that on the outside of an envelope and say it is. I have to sign for it, and I never did. So I'm in here with the IRS. You're looking at me. I'm an honest person. They're liars. Does that make sense? But that actually happened to me.
Well, yeah, it makes sense. But getting to the larger aspect, caller of your scenario, and again, I'm not shooting down what you're saying. I think it's doable, but we're talking about a swath that's more a swath of the population that has the mobility factor behind them and not tied down, and also they have some discretionary income, or presumably under your scenario they've got some money or at least some ability to obtain money to travel or to move or to leave from where they're at. But I've talked to so many people who are, as I just said, duct taped to their circumstances, or duct taped to their circumstances because of a lack of money. What about those people?
Well, to a certain extent. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Joe.
No, I mean, I was just going to add that it was just, we could probably provide numbers of scenarios like this. But yeah, I get what you're saying. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, what I would say to that is what I started off with. It's like if 3 to 5% are awake and aware and have been preparing for a number of years. I mean, I'm sorry, but if we're going to try to reach all the people that you brought into this scenario, Doug, that's not going to happen. We don't have time. If we had 10 years, I'd agree with you 100%. Yeah, no doubt. We got a chance. And if we just grow to 10% or to 15%, that leaves only 85 or 90% out there. And I know people like that too. But the thing is, if we don't start, if we just, as we've done, we've gotten a little bit bogged down in pointing out the problems, and we haven't gotten to coming good with some solutions. And so what I'm saying is that if we start putting these solutions out there in front of people, and a trickle starts flowing in that direction, then that trickle will grow. And now, how many people are we going to save? Depends on how much time we got, right?
Right.
And
yeah, it's related, definitely.
Because it goes to that note scenario that I was talking about, a note on a scale. And everybody that's listening to this has to understand something. I'm not saying that there's a higher frequency note that only a certain percentage of people can pick up on. What I'm saying is that there were people before me that were picking up on it. I think I've picked up on it, and there's people that are going to follow me that will pick up on it. But to tell you the truth, the reality is that we're all going to pick up on it, and we're all going to move through that, and that's the good news. That's the real good news. In other words, now say, for instance, all this happens by September 15th next year. We'll be lucky to keep 10 or 15% in reality.
We'll be lucky to keep 5.
Well, yeah, but like, the other side of it, think about it, Doug. Back when you and Joe were talking about the not in my name on the Syria air campaign and all this other stuff, we threw them off, okay? You guys threw them off. And the reality is I applauded that, like, tremendously. So, see, what I'm saying is say this trickle starts and it grows. Well, this might make them reconfigure too. And that might make it so that it isn't September 15th next year. They may put it off for another 2 or 5 years after that. And if they do that, then maybe we've saved 30 or 50%. See what I'm saying? That's
yeah,
all I'm
exactly.
It's a sliding scale.
Right, and just to kind of encapsulate this and to close this out, what you're saying is both inform but also instruct as well, and part of the instruction or instructing part is offering hope and offering solutions specific to avoidance of being run down by the train. In other words, a wise man sees trouble and gets out of the way, instructing the people how to do that. And of course, you doing it in a method that other people can join in on as well. I get that. So I think that kind of summarizes it relatively well, right? I mean,
I think that's a perfect summary, and I used to try to wake people up. I got mad one time, and I slammed my hand down on the table so hard everybody in the place heard it, and I walked out. And now, people that are the most resistant to me, whenever I'm around a group of guys, I look at the people that are the most in sync with me, and I just talk over the heads of the other people. If they want to get it, fine. I've had a guy tell me straight out, I don't want to know about any of this. I don't really care, and everything else. Great friend of mine. And I thought about that for about a week, and I came back to him and I said, John, look, I said, if you knew about something that was really, really bad, and you honestly believed it with all your heart, would you not share that with your best friends and your relatives? Now, you got free choice. You can accept it or you can reject it. That's it. But I'm moving on. And that's also the evolution over like the last year and a half. I mean, and we've got to keep moving it in that direction, because that's what puts on the most pressure to the people that are running the world.
Very well said.
Caller, I want to thank you for your insight tonight, but we're going to let you go. We got 10 minutes left. We're going to try and hit a few other callers. God bless you, and thanks for your
thank you very much,
time.
guys. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you.
Merry Christmas. Good insights.
All right, we're going to go to area code 509. 509, thanks for holding. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
God bless you, and greetings in Jesus' name. Okay, first question. Doug, did you order the double-out buck from Midway USA?
I'm not going to answer that on there, but thank you.
Okay, that's good enough. Okay, I have a little something that came to mind earlier when I was listening. Those who want something for nothing end up with nothing for something, and then quotation marks, you can say, and everything eventually.
Profound. Very profound. If you think that through,
Awesome.
if you understand, yep, yeah, absolutely. It's everything has a price. Yep.
People don't realize it. You know, they give up their freedom, their personal dignity. I know people are not meant to be proud, but you should be happy with some form of accomplishment. And people give that up. You know, everything depends on the welfare check, the food stamps, what they're getting from mom and dad, or what they can con out of their neighbor. I mean, it's just like the men before. Those are two hard calls to follow. You know, it's honesty and integrity, and people have to be willing to pull themselves up by the bootstraps and do something that's accomplishment. It's true accomplishment. And like you said, a producer by some form or another. There's always something somebody can do. There's always something somebody can do. Besides burn electricity, watching TV.
Yeah, and I'm not saying this for any other reason than to address what you said. Among my travels today, I took I don't know, a care package perhaps. Well, actually several care packages, but one care particular, and this struck me. It really hurt my heart to a young lady, and when I say young, I'm 30, and her husband. They've got 2 children. The husband refuses to work. The woman also, well, she has not kept a job. She's had more jobs than I've had showers in the past 2 months. Of course, that's an exaggeration. But the children were going to be suffering this year. Tomorrow and Christmas Day, both with food and with just the things that the average person should be able to provide their children. And we took them my wife and I took them a care package, and it just struck me as it hurt my heart to see the waste. And you know what? I looked in the guy's eyes, and he can't feel sorry, or he can't feel good about himself. And the woman can't feel good about themselves. You know, I mean,
no.
No. Wow.
People, there's
go ahead.
Yeah. There's just like him refusing to work. I know someone personally. I'm related to him, and good grief, 3 years now? I ain't gonna do that. Now it's to the point to where, I'll take a job washing dishes just to try to get a check in. And I say, well, how many places have you applied where they wash dishes? I ain't gonna go in there and apply. Okay, what they got to do, catch you going down the road, lasso you, pull you out of the truck, and drag you in and make you go to work, I mean, come on, people. But there are people out there truly who are trying and can't find a job, but in all of my life, I have made good money pretty much my whole life. And at times that I wasn't making good money, it was due to my choice that I thought, okay, I'm going to take a break, go get me a simple little job, and wash dishes or cut meat or do whatever, and that was only a temporary position. I just wanted a break, but when I wanted to do a job that paid minimum wage, if I would accept that, I found one. Now, I understand things are different nowadays, but if people want to work, there is something to do, maybe not for everybody, but somebody who is truly seeking will find a job. But they have to be willing to say, well, I used to make $15 an hour. Why would I go to work for minimum wage? To eat, to pay the bills the best you can, so you can stand up on your own 2 feet. It's simple math. I love that last caller.
Yes.
He was good. He was really good.
He made some excellent points.
Oh, excellent points. And positive, a positive outlook. I look at everything in a way, and I keep an eye on the news, and I've noticed here, the last 3 days, as far as I'm concerned, the news cycle has slowed down, even on the alternative sites. You got a bunch of hash and rehash, very few news stories, real news stories. And people say, man, how do you keep from getting depressed? And I just look at them and I say, well, I've read the book of Revelations, and this is all going to happen. It has to happen in order for things to come through fruition. And if you wish for babies to continue being murdered and innocent people being slaughtered, then wish that God doesn't come back soon, that Jesus Christ doesn't return. And you'll have all that many more. I said, no, it's quite positive, actually. I said, we win. We win.
We're already
fighting
from a position of victory.
Physically.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I may not live through it physically, but if the Lord wishes me to, if that's His will, you know what? I'll be here and I'll hear that trumpet sound. Either way, it's God's will.
Yep. Anyway, I would say there are people listening to this program tonight that when they go to bed tonight, this could very well be their last night on this
very much.
earth.
Every morning I wake up, I say, well, look around. Maybe sometimes if I feel rotten, I have to pinch myself and say, oh, thank you, Lord, for another day. Please, make me somehow make me productive, somehow, some way, somewhere. And people ask me, hey, I like to see, when I greet people, hi, how you doing, or good afternoon, or something, and they say, oh, I'm good, how are you doing? I say, well, I woke up alive again this morning, so the Lord gave me another day. It beats the alternative. I hear it beats the alternative, haven't tried it yet. And you get a smile on somebody's face, it doesn't really take much. You get a smile on somebody's face, and you can help their day out, just even if it's a little bit.
Absolutely. My friend, we're up against the close of the program. We're going to have to cut you loose, but what a great call. Thank you. Thank you so much for that
thank you, and that painting story brought a tear to my eye myself, and I never knew your dog.
Wow. I got to tell you, what a day this has been. The caller, God bless you. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
And I'll be putting a picture. I'll be putting a picture of the painting on our website as soon as I can get it off of the camera and onto the computer. And I just want to say this in the spirit of that last caller, folks. We all have lives. We all have many, many things going on in our lives, and many dynamics taking place. If you're a father or you're a mother listening to this, or if you're a daughter or a son and you're estranged from your family for any reason, use this time. And we know ladies and gentlemen, that Christmas Day, that Christ was not born on December 25th, and we know the pagan origins of Christmas. But in the spirit of the season, perhaps you can use this time to reach out and maybe mend something that has been broken for a while. Pray about it. And we'll see you back here on Christmas night. Joe?
Yeah, everybody have a great day tomorrow and a great Christmas. Stay safe. We know the storms out there are getting bad and they're getting worse. Weather's supposed to be crappy. But stay safe, all of you, and we will see you back here on Thursday night. God bless you all. Until then.